pleasure to be here. Thank you all for joining. You know, one of the things that we see is that this journey of AI is really taking an unbelievable turn in the industry. So many CIOs, so many business leaders are saying, how does this benefit my business? One of the things we saw was that 18 months ago, before ChatGPT really went live, so few people really knew what the power of AI was. Even though ChatGPT and OpenAI have been in development for years and years and years with billions of dollars being invested, it really wasn't until that time when users saw what the capability of these large language models were that they said, what is the impact of this? And so one of the things Lenovo has done is this is the second time we are unveiling what we call our CIO Playbook for Asia Pacific. And one of the things we wanted to do today is share with you some of those insights. What are the insights of the business leaders? What are the insights of the CIOs and the IT decision makers? And it was very important today to have all of the guests we had from so many different corporations and businesses downstairs to let them know that this AI journey is something that Lenovo can help with. Because we truly are. We are a leader when it comes to infrastructure. When you look at things from what we call a pocket to the cloud, from our Motorola handheld mobile phone devices to our award-winning ThinkPads, through to all of the data center products that we build. Whether it's for large public cloud environments or whether it's for private on-prem models. Those are all areas that Lenovo has a strategy, and we continue to invest many, many dollars. In fact, up until now, we've invested about $2 billion in AI R&D, and we've also committed that another $1 billion will be spent, some of which is going to be coming from things like ISV partnerships, which actually create those solutions that can be used by businesses, whether it may be around smart retail, could be around theft detection, could be around smart manufacturing and efficiency of process and quality control, or it could be in the financial services sector on things like customer interaction and portfolio review and profiling. So those are all areas that we see as opportunities. So just to get right into it, one of the things that's happening is, why is generative AI such a big topic? Number one, it's all about the data. It's all about the data. Data is being created, used, manipulated, acted upon now more than ever before. And it's because we have our mobile devices. It's because we have sensor networks around our cities. And so what's happening is you're creating a massive amount of data, which, if used the right way, can either make you more efficient, more productive, or more profitable. And so that's a wonderful thing. And so with the data explosion, one of the things we're seeing is you need infrastructure, you need services, and you need software to actually go act on that data. And so when we look at the market today, we believe that by 2027, this is almost a $500 billion industry. And those types of dollars, if you look at what the cloud providers are spending nowadays, it's massive amounts on infrastructure. It's building new data centers with 140 kilowatt racks and data centers that are capable of upwards of a gigawatt of power. So these are things that are being developed based off of this data explosion. And it's not just the hardware. One of the things that we estimate is that 4x the amount of revenue will actually come from the software side. And that goes to what I mentioned. Software is what's going to actually enable these use cases. And it has started off with things like frameworks, AI frameworks around large language models. That could be frameworks like PyTorch or Llama or Hugging Face. And then using those frameworks, creating these large language models to train data. And then you train data. And then eventually what you do is you have inference, or you act on that data. And in the long run, what you want to do is you retrain data to make sure you have even better accuracy over time. And so the market size is massive. When you look at the amount of software, the amount of services, the amount of hardware, one thing that is very true in the IT world is follow where the money is being spent. And it's actually one of the areas where Lenovo is making sure we do this. We put the right R&D in place, but we want to make sure we do it in an ethical, in a responsible, and in a sustainable way. Because one of the things about generative AI is generative AI and sustainability are at odds with each other. The amount of energy that it uses to do these large language model training engagements is massive. And so Lenovo is looking at it to say, how do we do things like enable more water-cooled servers? In fact, I was just in Barcelona not too long ago looking at our Barcelona supercomputer site. The amazing thing is you walk into the data center, you can have a conversation because you don't have these fans running at 15,000 RPMs, which are actually consuming 20% of the electricity of the entire data center. And you don't have these air handlers moving and chilling air. Well, guess what? If you look at our Neptune water-cooled servers, it actually creates efficiency. And so we're looking at opportunities for how do we create hardware that actually looks at sustainability even in these industries where it's driving much, much power consumption. So to get into it, this is the reason why we've done this survey. And let me give you a little background for what we did with IDC. We talked to over 900 IT decision makers and CIOs about their priorities around IT, about where are they putting their energy, their effort, their focus, what are they concerned about. We had those same type of discussions with business leaders as well. And so the sample size, we looked at large corporations, mid-size, and small, medium businesses. We also looked across different segments, across healthcare, across banking, financial services, across government. And in fact, over 130 of the respondents were actually based here in Australia. And so we believe that the sample size here in Australia was very relevant to what we wanted to make sure we accomplished, which is really give an entire playbook for all of Asia Pacific by country, by segment, that we want to share with other IT decision makers so that they can, so it can help them on this AI journey that they have or IT journey that they have. And so what did we find out? And I do encourage everybody to actually read the playbook. It's, and we'll provide QR codes for it as well. But what did we find out? First of all, there's a couple insights that we saw. If you look on the left-hand side of the screen, you'll actually see what are considered the top business priorities from CEOs around IT. And if you look at the top technology priorities, that's actually what CIOs are saying, or IT decision makers are saying is their top priorities. So first thing I want to call out is the fact that most CEOs are saying, oh, we need to leverage emerging technologies like generative AI. A year ago, nobody even thought about it because ChatGPT wasn't even out there. Nobody knew what the capabilities were. And so when you look at this, going from nothing to number one, and again, it goes back to that CEO premise of this thing looks like it has legs. How is it going to make me more efficient, more profitable, or more productive? And so people are recognizing that even from the infancy of where generative AI is today. The second thing I want to call out is improved sustainability. CEOs are saying, I need to look at sustainability, which is great. I think, as more corporate responsibility comes into play for most public companies, most government institutions, sustainability is something that people have to consider. It's good for the environment. It's good for, when we start looking at making sure we're conserving resources. The fact that people are actually calling out sustainability for the last few years, this is good. And the fact that it's actually rising in importance, also, I think it's very, very important. However, one of the things I'll share with you is we also discovered that top tech priorities for 2024, generative AI is number 4. And there's a reason for that. Because CIOs have other responsibilities other than saying, okay, more productive, more efficient, more profitable. It's also, how do I make this secure? How do I make sure that we are aligned to the right business processes or business focuses within the organization? How do we make sure that this is something that we can afford in conjunction with their CFOs? And so it's interesting because generative AI could be a very expensive proposition. And one of the things I've personally seen from traveling around the world, talking to different CEOs and CIOs around the world, is a lot of CIOs are saying, oh, I just need to buy the biggest generative AI system and put it in-house. Because they have this FOMO, this fear of missing out on, if I don't buy the biggest, well, they're not asking the right questions. They're not asking, what are the training set sizes? What are the parameters? Because what they'll realize is you need to know what the business outcome is that you want to try to achieve before you make these investments. So when we look at priorities for 24, it's not surprising. Security is always going to be top of the list. Data management is always going to be on top of the list. High performance computing platforms. That is good. It's good to see that that is actually something that people are recognizing that if you understand how to create high performance environments, maybe it's financial services and you're looking at high frequency trading, or maybe it's speed of customer service, accessing your accounts. High performance workloads are important. Maybe you're in the healthcare field and it's radiology and cancer detection. High performance computing is very, very important. And a lot of CIOs are saying, hey, I'm going to invest money there. Ransomware, malware attacks. This goes back to that security and cyber resiliency. These are the priorities that we're seeing out of the CIOs as we move forward. What is the second insight that we saw? First of all, spending is going to increase for AI, generative AI. Now, it doesn't mean budgets are getting bigger. CFOs are not saying, you know what, Mr. CIO, you have another 45% funding to spend. What we are seeing is that it's a shift of budget spend. Maybe some people are saying, you know what, for my personal computing infrastructure, for my client devices, we're going to extend the life cycle of a product from 4 to 5 years. Or maybe we're going to actually forego certain software as a service deployments into the cloud. Or maybe we're going to forego certain modernization efforts that we had for the organization. However, the feedback is clear. CIOs are going to spend money on generative AI because they do view it as important for the business. And when you look at the top 3 priorities, generative AI makes the top one: machine learning, AI infrastructure, deep learning, and then robotics. Those are all areas within that 45% spend that CIOs are saying, I am going to spend more money. Now, what's interesting is actually how do they view the deployment? We've been in this public cloud phase for probably the last 10 years, where more money was being spent in public cloud than there were in private infrastructure on-prem or on the edge on-prem. And so what we're seeing actually is that this is going to be a hybrid approach to the market. First of all, when you look at generative AI, it creates massive amounts of data. And public cloud providers make money on both the ingress and the egress of that data. And the data sets are so big, especially for large language models, a lot of times you can't afford to actually put all of that data up into the cloud. And so what we're seeing is that if you have data sovereignty requirements, if you have security requirements, if you have confidentiality requirements due to customer data like banking and financial services or healthcare, all of those are looking for that traditional DC spend type environment or public cloud type of private cloud type of environment. What we're also seeing is this edge environment. When you look at smart retail, smart manufacturing, so much of that data is actually being acted upon and gathered at the edge. And what we're seeing is to actually put that data up into the cloud, it's very, very expensive. And the latency is not that great. Sometimes you want to have a customer make a decision in a smart retail environment in seconds. And so, for instance, say you walk into your favorite department store and you say, hey, my favorite brand of shirt or blouse or suit is on sale. Wouldn't it be great if the department store actually knew who you were because you're a frequent shopper, they know the brand that is your preference, and as soon as you walk in the store, there's some signage that says, well, greetings, Vlad, it's nice to have you back. Oh, by the way, your brand of shirt is on sale today. Those are the types of decisions that you use machine vision for facial recognition. You act upon the data. You go look at a database to say, what has he purchased over the last 2 years? And then you make a suggestion, which hopefully for them creates revenue for the organization. Now, to take that same type of scenario and put it up into the cloud would cost too much money to say, hey, I'm going to put all this data in the cloud and I'm going to wait to get it back, because the latency would be too long sometimes. And so there's things that from a learning to a inference environment, you want to make sure latency is as low as possible. And so it's one of the reasons we are seeing that for private cloud, hybrid, and traditional data center, AI is actually creating this environment where it's not 50% of as a service is going up to the cloud. There's actually some requirements to be on-prem. And again, it's because of cost or latency. So that was insight number 2 that we found out. Insight number 3, I kind of mentioned this earlier. When it comes to Gen AI, businesses are excited, but CIOs are cautious. And this is really what I mentioned before. What are the top business challenges that CIOs face? So the first slide I showed you was kind of where the areas of focus were. But what are some of the challenges? Security and data privacy. Doug's going to talk a little bit about that as our Chief Security Officer for the corporation, about how Lenovo is approaching some of that. Digital transformation. everybody's trying to figure out, how do I actually become more engaged with my customers, with my clients, with my employees? How do I make it more efficient? Digital transformation is going to be something that's always going to be top of mind for a CIO. Data management and analysis of that data. That's a big one, right? There's so much information. What do you need? And so now we're starting to see within IT environments, there's job positions like chief data scientists that are opening up, or data analysts. That is going to be a big trend that we see in IT strategy, where you're going to see more people who are going to have focus on how to act on data. And so that's an area that a lot of CIOs view as a problem. Customer experience and talent acquisition. There's we're in this realm of generative AI, and it's so new, and there's so few relevant workers in that field today. And so talent acquisition and retention is going to be very, very critical when it comes to what CIOs are going to face moving forward. But one thing that all CIOs really look at is 91% of them actually view that generative AI is either going to be a massive game changer, or it's going to be required for the hygiene of the corporation. And so that, to me, is probably one of the most important areas that CIOs need to understand, that this is an area where other CIOs view this as either game-changing or a necessary must-have within the organization to make sure that they have the hygiene from either a security, a personalization standpoint, an ethical standpoint. People are going to have to invest in this type of technology. And so the final question that we asked around CIOs is, what is the investment that's being planned? So 75%, actually fully 88% of CIOs are planning to either have already invested or are planning to invest around generative AI. And so these are some of the insights that we saw. Within the playbook, you'll actually see this broken down by country within AP, and you'll also see it broken down by vertical segment. And so, the strategic imperatives, right? This is kind of the money slide. 45% believe that there's going to be an increase in spending. Now it's going to be what's not going to happen in order to afford this. 46% believe that generative AI is going to be a game changer in the industry. However, CIOs are putting it as cautious, because the idea here is you need to make sure you understand the business priorities before you start acting on the CIO priorities. 69% of CIOs prefer this to be in a private cloud or a traditional data center environment, with only 31% saying, hey, public cloud is going to be the model for me. And then the last thing that we saw was, which is what I mentioned, 45% of CIOs see that there's going to be a hiring challenge, which is probably one of the reasons that it's number 4 on the list. They need to make sure they have the right employees with the right skill sets actually working to understand these environments. So these are some of the strategic imperatives that CIOs have shared with us from a Lenovo standpoint with an IDC. So it's something that we want to make sure that we are staying on top of and adding value to other CIOs and IT decision makers out there in the industry. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to probably what is one of the most important parts of this, which is really the security around AI as we look at it. Doug?
All right. Go on in, Vlad.
Yeah. Thanks.
All right. So a lot of you didn't get to attend my talk earlier, so I'll try to keep this brief. It's a very broad subject. I am the first Chief Security Officer for Lenovo. And I think that's very thought leadership behavior for our company. You're starting to see the industry shift that way, but we're one of the first companies to actually move that direction, where I report directly into the CEO and into the audit committee of the board. And what that really does is a couple things. One, it gives the executive staff and the CIO and the board a lot more visibility into security. Everybody's being held more accountable around security, and that visibility is important. It also gives one person, the accountability that can represent that. Secondly, it makes my job a lot easier. I've taken a very, lack of better words, draconian approach of how we implement security in the company. So it's helped me do that much quicker than I could have if I was not at that level to make those decisions. What we're seeing with artificial intelligence is a couple things. One, It's now created yet another challenge for how the bad guys want to infiltrate your environment, but it's also accelerated the existing ones. So it's added what's called deep fake as another tool to infiltrate or find mechanisms to exploit a company. But it's also accelerated the traditional ways that the bad guys use to get access to your company. If you've noticed this, you used to get these phishing emails, phishing, all these different approaches that were very unsophisticated. You could, I mean, a novice could look at that note, email, and it's just not reliable. So you dismiss it. It's not getting to that case anymore. They're getting very sophisticated, very accurate, and very targeted. I'll give you an example. Obviously, I'm an executive at Lenovo, and we have a stock option program. Somebody knows our program. They know that I get stock. They know that you have to accept the grants, right? There's a process, and it's an external company that manages our stock. So we have a notification that says this is an external email, so that raises your spidery senses. But we always get external emails on that. I get emails in a timely fashion that say, Doug, click the QR, capture the QR code and accept your grants. And that's very tempting because you don't want to lose your grants. But you have to have what I call, and I talk a lot more about than anything, is critical thinking. I gave a talk this morning, and a lot of people came up to me after my talk and said the most interesting thing you talked about was this critical thinking. And what I mean by that is most of us in this room have been trained to be critical thinkers. So whether I take a position one way or another, whether it's in my business, political, whatever I take, I've always had the opinion that whatever position supports my decision or my beliefs, I like to understand the opposite view of it. Because one, I'm going to learn, and two, it's not just because I read about it doesn't mean it's accurate. So that's critical thinking. You question what you see, you question what you read. We're obviously in the world of clickbait, you guys all know, and now we're creating a generation of people that haven't been trained in critical thinking, and so they're willing to accept at face value what they see, which obviously creates more vulnerability. If you look at companies that have been infiltrated, attacked by the bad guys, around 80% of that comes through employees. So they're the most valuable asset you have in your company, but it's the most vulnerable. And so they're going to approach that employee in all sorts of different ways, and they're accelerating and scaling. It used to take weeks, months, years to curate a really good social engineering. It takes weeks now to hit 50,000 people in a company where it used to take 50 person years to do that. So it's faster, it's scalable, and the accuracy is incredible. And so that's a big challenge, and that's why in my role we take security culture as one of our pillars at the company. And what I mean by that is I spend a lot of time training our employees to be critical thinkers, understand what security risks there are, and ensure that you participate as a member of the company in helping secure the company. I often say security is not just my job, it's everybody in the company's job. And so that's why I'll give you an example of this draconian approach. You're not allowed on our network with your device unless you've had the training and your device has the right security software, the patches, and updates. If you don't have them, I remove you from the network. And that will happen, and that's how serious we take it, and that's how much support I have at the executive level. The good news is we can use this technology for good. So we now apply this technology for advanced threat detection. And so it gives us more sophistication and deep learning and machine learning to look at anomalies in your environment, whether it's in your network or the devices, the usage of that device, how the person accesses certain things. You have that internal data as the IT environment. Use that data to look for anomalies in your environment. And so obviously there's going to be nefarious stuff that happens with artificial intelligence, but certainly we want to advancement of this technology to find issues. Now, researchers have found that using artificial intelligence have achieved 98% accuracy when they use it to defend the bad guys. And that does two things. One, it stops, prevents, helps you mitigate. But secondly, it stops a lot of the false positives, which can absolutely take down a security organization, which is limited resources. And then finally, along with the great stuff you want to do in this to secure it, you also have to have the compliance around ethics. You have to set the ethics standards in your company, and then you have to comply with that. Now, in our company, we actually have a structure where you have to register when you're going to do something with artificial intelligence, and then we have to approve it. And part of that is, what are we doing ethically with that? Now, you all know that this is going to become one of the biggest challenges as we all go into election cycles. As an example, these models, as Vad said, are trained. They use data sources to train them, and then you get inference that helps you make decisions. Those data sets are broad, and the more data, the more training, the more reliable they become. However, there's the opposite effect where somebody can actually plant data and deliver that out in the environment. You absorb that data and train on data that's not reliable. It's biased, and there's some other elements associated with it. Therefore, your inference will have the bias. And so as a company, we take this very seriously around things that we work with to ensure that bias is removed. And so that's very important. And I believe I'm on the next one. I have something to show you. So I want you to take a look at this. I think it's my video. I want you to take a look at this and just see how far and advanced things have gotten in a very short period. By the way, in security, the rate at which artificial intelligence has impacted security has gone much, much faster than anybody, I think, in the industry anticipated. So here's an example of what can be done.
Hello, Lenovo team. Watch the sneak preview of AI footage from DeVere. I will now showcase Doug Fisher briefly speaking in fluent French, Mandarin, and Russian. Sit back and enjoy the show. La rapidité de traduction est une autre caractéristique de notre technologie. Ce qui prenait autrefois des heures, voire des jours, peut désormais être accompli en quelques instants, sans sacrifier la qualité. 翻译速度是我们技术的另一个标志。曾经需要数小时，甚至数天才能完成的工作，现在只需几分钟即可完成，而且不会牺牲质量。Скорость перевода – еще одна отличительная черта нашей технологии. То, что раньше занимало часы или даже дни, теперь можно выполнить за считанные секунды, не жертвуя при этом качеством. George and his
Okay,
team.
so
I just want to say, très bien. That was great.
I knew you'd particularly like that, Alex, because you said you speak Russian. So I don't. Well, I assure you, I don't speak any of those languages. The point. Okay, so now a lot of you will admire Samir for a bit, but a lot of you. A lot of people would say, wow, okay, you got all the resources you need, Doug, to produce this and curate this. Let me just tell you how this happened. And I won't tell you how I got to this, but how this was developed is a young lad who is more into CRM, marketing, has a passion for AI. I found out about it. He came over to my house, filmed me at my house with a cell phone, and captured my image and likeness. Now, he said you can say anything you want. Just make sure your gestures, you have some gestures, and say Mary had a little lamb, do poetry, doesn't matter. Just say something. I'm going to capture your likeness and your voice. Then I will feed what you say. So all the words that were said in that, I never said one of them. That was my voice, and it was my likeness, but I never said a single word that was used in that video. My family couldn't tell the difference. My good friends couldn't tell the difference. My wife couldn't tell the difference that wasn't me. Now, certainly, the trained eye could. The media happens to be one of the best trained eyes. All of you in the room will notice things like my gesture, kind of consistency, my eye movement. But the untrained eye just looked at that as that was me. And so part of the, building tools are recognition of anomalies around who I am as a person, repetitive gestures, eye movements, enunciations. I didn't say a single right. I try not to anyway, but I am human. And so that was a perfect speech. By the way, I will use that for some of my keynotes. It's a very efficient tool for giving speeches. Matter of fact, I'm going to deliver this to the entire company to highlight how deepfakes work. And my entire script will be fed to this, and it will be presented to the entire company. Spoiler alert. And then I'll step in front of the thing and say, now I mentioned deepfake. That was not me speaking. Two things that brings the point home, and two, write a script and I don't have to stand in front of a studio, take 50. It's done in one take. So anyway, that's just pointing out some of the advances and some of the things I deal with as the Chief Security Officer. So thanks.
Thank you. Just leave this here.
Well, grab it. I'll grab one.
So grab anyone?
Doesn't matter.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I hope you're enjoying your lunch. The first course was really nice. So I'm going to focus on the vertical insights. And Vlad talked about some of the insights from CIOs. And the vertical side is also very interesting. Now, the first part is our input across was that there was an appetite for AI across most verticals. There was absolutely, with a big focus on government. A lot of governments actually came with the feedback that this was a big focus for them. Retail and BFSI. Retail and BFSI is not a surprise, but maybe some of you from a government standpoint, it is a big focus. But if we look at the Gen AI investment status, you look at the government and retail, as I mentioned, has got great momentum. Healthcare was very cautious. And we do see that healthcare, while they have a big need, they're always cautious in actually investing. But you will see these trends over time. Once they start something, you have the innovators, they move in very, very quickly. Now, Vlad did talk about, but I just want to talk about the game changers, hygiene factors, and the distractions. The game changers, again, is an area where many of them have actually come up, and especially around the BFSI, have actually said that the game changer is a big focus for them. And if you look at the investment here, 85% in government and BFSI is at 73%, so it's very high. Now, what I'm going to focus on today is 3 verticals. And I'll walk through the 3 verticals, the first one being manufacturing. And manufacturing has always been an early adapter. And as Vlad mentioned, Edge is driving the AI adoption in manufacturing. And most important is they're the highest spenders among verticals. Edge computing, you're going to see a huge increase. And I'm going to repeat what Vlad said about where the data needs to be. So on a shop floor, in a remote factory, they want those insights at that spot. So that's where edge computing spending is a big increase. And at this point of, Lenovo, again, from an edge standpoint, has a complete, very wide portfolio which actually supports the edge. So you see the 40% increase. And if you look at some of the edge cases, industrial automation, manufacturing, IoT device. Now, they were very early users of IoT. But how do you put this all together? And how do you get insights out of that? And insights on the floor. And of course, last but not least, is real-time analytics and insights, which is a very important aspect, especially in manufacturing. Now, on the Gen AI use cases, it is about predictive business intelligence, predictive and prescriptive analysis to ensure that prediction is there before things break down. Manufacturing equipment, and there's a lot of ISVs that we've actually partnered with that actually focus around this area. Productivity is another area. Obviously, quality control and defect detection. So productivity is very, very important. And conversational AI, looking at low tasks like inventory management and virtual assistants. Again, AI is an area that we at Lenovo also in our factories have actually used this, and production is absolutely improved. The line, the assembly line is also, there's more efficiency put in. So across manufacturing, this is a big vertical. So edge is going to be a big focus. The second one is retail. And retail is one that over 82% of CIOs plan to invest in Gen AI. There's a lot of emphasis on hyper-personalization. And what that means is that it's about, and Vlad gave that example when he walks into a store. You know, he's got that, special brand. We all do that. I'd love to actually walk in and say, here, Samir, you come in here. This is an area that we believe that you want a discount. But we also think, based on this, you may want to actually get a nice cuffling with this, and we got a sale on that. So this is again right at the edge, and retail is all about you spend things on what you don't really need, right? So it really helps out a lot of them. So if you look at retail, so productivity, personalization of understanding, so getting that one customer that costs a lot, but keeping and retaining that customer and using AI at the edge is very important. So hyper personalization is a big focus. Conversational AI. How do we look at keeping that customer satisfied? At the same time, there is labor shortages of answering a phone call and talking to a customer, but there's some basic areas that can be actually taken care of. So customer support and order tracking. And there's, again, partners that we have. And if you go, we don't have them at this particular venue, but DeepBrain is one of our partners that actually can give, conversational AI where you can have an avatar of any way, any language. They can speak Russian like Doug. And you can actually ask the question where, and they can, there's about 80 different ethnicities, the look and feel. And you could ask the question on tracking, and it's like having that conversation with almost a human, right? So these are and business intelligence, heat mapping in retail stores. If you look at a retail store, you want to go and look at which retail store is doing better than the others, and why is it doing better? There's an example of one retail store had EV chargers outside their store. So people coming in and charging their EVs, what do? They go into the store, they pick up stuff, and they spend more time at the store. So, wow, that's going well. So why don't we put some EV chargers in some of the other ones? So this is just an example, but you can do heat mapping of what's the best time. When do I roster? When 4:00, when the drive-through through a retail fast food. How do I actually manage this and make sure that the employees are out, not cleaning up, but they're actually serving customers and so forth. And this could vary from retail store to retail store. Again, the CIO's top priorities there was leveraging emerging technologies. So Gen AI, a higher satisfaction experiences and satisfaction. Obviously, you go and get customers back, and again, driving digital business innovation. I'll quickly go through the last one. I'm running out of time, so I want to give you enough time for questions and answers. The other is BFSI, and they've been really the early adapters of Gen AI, with already 20% already invested. And me personally speaking to CIOs in the BFSI, they have some form of AI actually happening, whether it's AI operations, customer care. But the areas that they're actually looking at is also know your customer, quite similar to retail. So if they invest, how can I go in and get a wider portfolio? Many people have multiple bank accounts. How can I maximize this customer in my bank? Conversational AI, digital assistant, of course, automatic speech. I can't remember the last time I've been to a branch. I know many of you may not also. So you want to make sure you're close to your bank at the same time with a conversational AI. And last thing is productivity, risk assessment, some mundane points. When somebody comes for a bank loan, how do you really go through the entire end-to-end aspects of checking, or do you also have some sort of credit risk analysis with some underwriting in it? So there's obviously productivity that actually brings up the focus on the general use cases. So with that, the big thing is planning to invest in 2024 is 73%. So there's many of them looking at this and how they can actually expand this further. So there's a lot of opportunities out there. A lot of them looking at expanding on AI, and you're going to see these cases, these verticals being big focus around. So with that, I will pass it to Kumar.
So Central Asia Pacific is basically ASEAN, Hong Kong, Taiwan, and ANZ is a new expanded territory for me. I've been with Lenovo now for 3 years. Obviously, prior experiences include working with companies like Nutanix, Dell, and long back Sybase and Sun Microsystems. I just want to add to what Sumir was talking about, the vertical insights. In fact, we sort of talk around with a lot of the banking CIOs. Banking CIOs have actually sort of advanced their utilization of AI into very interesting areas, actually. One of them is sort of advisory services. They're using intelligent bots to provide preliminary advisory services for customers, which I think is a very interesting extension of the use cases for AI. And also similarly, we see in government, the use cases around in terms of smart traffic management, smart city management. In fact, one of the cities in ASEAN, Manila, uses AI to manage their car number plate identification, and manages the traffic traffic movement on the busy streets. So that's how they're using AI as an use case. But let me sort of focus on the ANZ insights as part of that playbook. You know, the way you look at this slide, this slide is focused on Gen AI, and it might show only 2% of the profiled CIOs are actually invested in Gen AI. But I think I would look at it in two forms. One is obviously there's a significant amount of interest to invest and look at AI as a technology, which is 77%. The second thing is probably this market is fairly strong on a cloud adoption, and the repatriation has not really picked up speed as the way it should have. So probably that's one of the reasons why you see a 2% adoption on that. And just to give you a point of reference, EMEA, the same survey on EMEA markets is around 45%. So against the 2%. So probably the Australian CIOs or the ANZ CIOs are slightly more cautious, in line with the overall sort of the findings that Vlad, Sumir, and Doug shared about. So that's one. On to my next slide. This slide is a busy slide, but I'll just talk through, sort of break it up into two parts. One is obviously you see the Gen AI investment, sort of repetition of what I shared earlier. But the last one is more of an overall AI. It's not the enterprise AI and Gen AI. And as you would see, almost like 83%, almost 80 to 83% thinks it's a game changer, and it's also hygiene. So that can be part of the requirements as part of the enterprises. But just going back to what we have been talking about, one of the biggest challenges that the CIOs talked about or shared as part of the insight is that how do we ensure that employees don't have a fear of losing their jobs as part of an automation journey that the AI will drive? Because as we drive more process automation, productivity automation, will people start losing jobs? So the question of reskilling, retraining those people and the workforce becomes a key consideration. Second is obviously the lack of training that is available to run a lot of AI tools, especially around Copilot and stuff like that. That's one. And also doing coding on those applications. That's one thing. And the third is, how do I sort of now take the use case, create a business case for it, and go up the CEO or CFO to justify the investments? So that's the three sort of challenges that they talked about. From a use case perspective, one of those interesting ones, which I have not seen in a lot of other markets, but it's very interesting in ANZ, we see how do I leverage AI to do crowd control, crowd management, which is a very interesting use case that is pretty relevant in this market. Secondly, productivity is big. I was talking about how do I leverage AI to build applications faster, lesser number of codes, and how do I drive that? So AI ops, DevOps will become a big significant sort of a use case leveraging AI technology. And the third one is as we talked about, intelligent chatbots used in FSI, used in retail. So those are the top three use cases or business cases. Moving on to the next one, is this the edge computing spend? I think we talked a lot about the edge computing. The reason why edge computing is becoming relevant, it's about bringing the infrastructure closer to where the data is being generated. And that's the reason why this entire gamut of edge computing is so significant in every industry. It's not limited just to a logistic or services industry. It's extending to retail, it's extending to FSI, it's extending to government, it's extending to healthcare. And as we see in ANZ, the growth might be slower than AP, but it's a significant growth, from an 18% growth on a year-on-year on spend. And obviously the use cases, I think Sumit talked about it, retail and customer experience is one big sort of use case in the retail industry. How do I get closer to the customer? How do I quickly turn that data into an insight and an action? So I think that's the important thing. And obviously the video surveillance and security is another significant use case. And if you look at the entire infrastructure, that sort of talks about the entire infrastructure from an edge deployment, starting from the devices, onto the network, onto the core data centers. Every part of it will be impacted by an AI technology. So that's the okay. I think that sort of finished up, right? And then we move to this one. So AI for all, I think, I know it's a Lenovo term, but I think it's relevant for everybody. The way, for at least my belief is, AI is going to be transformative. It's be a transformative technology. It will be a disruptive technology which will impact each one of us individually and also enterprises and businesses. And that's the reason why we said AI for all. How do I leverage AI as a technology to become a sort of a force for good in terms of solving humanity's biggest challenges? I think that's the reason why we think AI for all is very, very relevant. And just to sort of round it up with this slide, our belief is that you can start anywhere. Personal AI is basically an AI built into your device. It could be a cell phone. A private AI could be a private infrastructure within your enterprise where you're building your AI enterprise framework. Public could be on your public cloud where you're building use cases around AI framework. So you can start anywhere. And it could span across any sort of use cases that we talked about, from either from enterprise or creating digital twins, which is metaverse, or getting into building Gen AI applications either on-prem or off-prem. And the most important thing, I think, which Doug talked about, is how do I start using AI responsibly and ethically? Because the biggest red flags that every customer has is how will it impact privacy of users. So I think that's one of the big things that is there. I know the numbers are here from a Lenovo standpoint, but I want to touch upon probably 3 of them. One is obviously Sumit talked about. We are at $2 billion from a revenue perspective on AI infrastructure. In fact, if I'm not wrong, IDC ranks us number 3 now on the AI revenue, AI infrastructure-led revenue, if I may say so. And then obviously the $1 billion investment that Sumit talked about on building an ecosystems and on also building platforms. And the innovator program where we are sort of incubating 50 plus ISVs. A lot of it started from North America, but we are seeing a significant uptick in local ISVs now in markets like Singapore, Thailand, Indonesia, and also getting into Australia and New Zealand. So that number will keep on growing. That means there will be more validated solutions or use cases for us to go back to customers and build that entire framework for us. So that's I think that's the last slide, right? Okay, so thank you. Thank you very much.
I've got a question. I know that there are some data center providers in Australia working with infrastructure vendors and their partner ecosystems like integrators, consultants, advisors to kind of come together to, workshop and work as a team with those 3 pillars to help customers test and get their data ready and create an environment for them to test AI on-prem in a safe, trusted environment, obviously for finance, etc. As you said, they're not all going to do this in the cloud when they went on to test and do POCs and things like that. So I know that there are some that are working very proactively with their partner ecosystem to kind of create environments and bring everything together to make it easier for that to happen. I'm just kind of interested to get a sense of, is that the kind of activity that you're doing with partners in Australia, or is there anything you can tell me about that? Sorry, it's a basic question, but I'm just not familiar with you kind of go to market with partners around this stuff.
Pass the mic over.
So yeah, absolutely. So there's a part of our business where we're absolutely working with a lot of the cloud service providers, working with them with the infrastructure, the GPU-based servers and so forth. So we have several of them across. And you're right. How do they take this into the market? So they do work with further partners, and we do have a partner ecosystem around Australia, as well as the services organizations. Putting all this together and how we work with our customers to take it into them. Now, is a very hybrid environment. Obviously, the cloud service providers, they want to make sure that they're, it's using managed services as well as it goes to their cloud. But the realization that the data is at the edge, the data is on-prem, they work with these partners to go and provide that entire ecosystem. So it's a very hybrid environment. And the other aspect that we also work with these partners is a lot of customers, as they're starting to get into this journey, there's a shift in terms of how they're using their infrastructure. And there's very few CEOs or companies that go to a CIO and say, here's $20 million and go and buy this new shiny thing, right? So there is a challenge on the on-prem infrastructure. How do I get my investment? Because it wasn't planned, but my competitor is being extremely aggressive. I need to go in and be competitive in the market. So we have a as-a-service solution for them, which is called TrueScale. So the customer could actually take that, and it also happens with our managed services. Take as a pay-as-you-go solution, put it on-prem, also working with the cloud service provider where they provide their services and they get the whole stack and they pay as they go on a monthly basis. So to summarize, absolutely we're doing this with cloud service providers across managed services. And just to tell you, from a as-a-service TrueScale model, Australia, ANZ for us is one of the leading markets for us that have actually adapted this very well. So it works extremely well, and we're working very, very closely. And I think it's a journey, and we're seeing the uptick happening more and more. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, I just want to add, just to give you a perspective of how do we see service provider space in this. It's interesting. There is this cloud service providers who are working on NVIDIA platforms. They're NVIDIA certified partners. They are broadly going and sort of creating capacity to provide GPU as a service, AI as a service. The interesting fact is now we are also seeing telco providers, the SP providers, like Singtels of the world, Telstras of the world. They are building data centers which are GPU enabled and AI enabled as a service provider. So that's one thing that is happening in the service provider space. Now, what service providers are looking for, they're looking at infrastructure providers and solution providers like us to come and bring their entire platform stack and the ISV stack to start populating those racks and provide that as a use case for their customers to go after. Because if you look at a lot of these cloud service providers and telco providers are struggling to go and sell the customer beyond just the data connectivity or beyond just the call connectivity. How do I start now value adding my customer? And that's where I think we are seeing a significant uptake. In fact, one of the customers that we're working right now in Indonesia is a telecom provider who is building a full-fledged data center for GPU as a service just to service the government functions. So the government to consumer, all the use cases, all the functions will be served through that. So yeah, so we would see that significantly spreading out that market and the maturity of the offerings. I think that will drive more adoption. And that's what we see. Okay. Thank you.
I think there's one more thing that could help answer the question with even some more context. So one of the things Lenovo has also invested in as part of that R&D is we set up 4 what we call CODEs, which is Center of Discovery and Excellence for AI. And so at this current point, we have 4 of those Center of Discovery and Excellence being set up, where we will help customers and partners talk a little bit about, here's the things that you need to look at from a generative AI or AI perspective. And so those are things that, engaging with the team here at Lenovo, you could actually start, putting customers in touch with these CODEs or codes to actually help them on their AI journey.
Thank you. Yeah, Alex from Tech Advice at Life. At the moment, we have a number of different AI models. You've got OpenAI's ChatGPT, Google Gemini, Perplexity, Anthropic, and Claude, and they're all trying to leapfrog each other. Is Lenovo working with any particular one of those? Is Lenovo working with all of them? Does Lenovo work on its own models? When you say smarter AI, I mean, there's so many different choices. Which AIs are you using?
Yeah, Alex, we don't have a preference, right? So one of the things Lenovo is doing is, if you're looking at, or if you ask the question of, is Lenovo working on our own frameworks? In areas around AI PC, we are absolutely looking at our own frameworks because those have to be optimized for things like how much memory and compute do you have in a mobility device, where you can do either training or inference or retrain on something like this. So in those areas around AI PC, as we've disclosed, we are absolutely working on some fundamental frameworks to be rolled out that will help benefit some of our what I'll call edge devices. However, when you look at the data center side, this is an area where we are going to continue to work with everybody. Our view is how do we deliver the best hardware, services, and software and support that can help everyone on their customer journey. So for us, it's a matter of if it's working with a Microsoft, if it's working with a Nutanix, if it's working with a Cohesity, if it's working with a VMware. Those are all engagements that we will make sure we take on, because it's ultimately what does the customer want to use for their software infrastructure. So I would say that view us as a very neutral party when it comes to AI development, AR frameworks within the data center environment.
And would that extend to the hardware as well in terms of NVIDIA and AMD and other hardware chip AI makers?
Yeah. So the complexity of hardware is getting very interesting. The permutations of CPU front ends and GPU back ends. You could do either a AMD, a Intel, or even a Grace on a Grace Hopper. Yeah. You can do an ARM front end. You can do MI300. You can do H100s, 200s, Gaudi 2, Gaudi 3. The viewpoint that Lenovo has is we are going to make sure we are first to market with whatever our customers want to offer to use. Yeah. And so that's our corporate edict, to make sure that we are listening to our customer base, making sure that this is an expensive proposition to do all the R&D around that. But at this point, we are looking at all the alternatives out there. I think NVIDIA had a very quick early run to the start of the AI game, especially the generative AI training game. But I will also say that there's other providers that are very quickly closing in. Yeah. And frameworks make it so you could be portable across those infrastructures pretty easily. Yeah.
Thank you.
Just add to what Vlad was saying. So in terms of partnerships, whether the technology partners, and I mentioned, 50 plus partners in the ISV front giving us 165 solution. While we're doing this in AI, it's in our DNA to do partnerships. So it's all about choice to our customers. And it's not something that we just started because of, what we're doing today in the AI. It's always been Lenovo's DNA is about partnerships. It's about, as Vlad said, being neutral. And most important for us is what our customer wants. And if we have, it's not about, if we had just proprietary, we would, the last thing we want to do is push a proprietary solution which is not right for our customers. So that's where partnerships, whether the NVIDIA, the AMD, Intel, the software and the ISVs, it all comes together, because innovation, 6 months down the line, this journey just started. There could be a new innovation out there, a new company bringing it out. But the infrastructure, the thought process, the processes we have can actually bring in a lot of partners. So it's all about the ecosystem which we put together extremely well and deliver to our customers.
Hi, Nick Ross for High Performance Laptops and IT Wire and a few others. You covered it a bit in the slides, but overall, after hearing for years that people are hating the fact that cloud costs are going through the roof, to what extent generally are you seeing a move away from the cloud to people hosting stuff locally, using AI locally to process workloads? And you've already mentioned Edge, but is there a noticeable overall trend of clouds peaked, or is it still growing, ballooning massively?
So it's interesting. From a Lenovo perspective, cloud customers are actually some of our biggest customers. And so we view the marketplace as a hybrid environment. It really is. And so when you look at software as a service, if you look at so many of the offerings that the cloud providers offer, whether it's an Azure hyper-converged environment, those are all things that we're going to support incredibly well. In fact, even with Microsoft, Lenovo is the default partner for the digital twins environments or the NVIDIA OVX environment. So we are the hardware behind Microsoft Azure's implementation of OVX. And so for those customers who are doing digital twin environments, having an offering back to the cloud provider is very valuable. Where we see people starting to repatriate from the cloud is those areas of high performance computing or where latency can't be tolerated to a certain extent, or cost. And so those three areas are really where we're starting, and we're hearing CIOs talk about that more and more. More CIOs are talking about my cloud bill is through the roof. Well, if it's software as a service, then it makes sense for your business. And maybe it's it could be a storage environment, it could be a software as a service environment. There are very many good use cases for cloud. However, if you're talking about a high performance computing environment, if you're talking about a low latency environment, maybe things like high frequency trading in the banks, if you're talking about smart retail, where decisions have to be made quickly based off of a small variable parameter size, those are areas that we definitely see repatriating back into on-prem. But for the most part, Lenovo does see it as this is going to be a hybrid environment moving forward, and it's a good thing. It's a good thing to for customers to have that experience.
I guess just follow up on that. Is there like any cannibalization of this? Is the hybrid local repatriated side growing from nothing and eating into cloud, or are they both growing and the repatriation's kind of growing faster?
I think they're both growing right now. What's interesting is the public cloud model for generative AI on things like chatbots and maybe code development, and those are growing at an insatiable rate for consumption. And so the cloud providers are doing extremely well when it comes to their public AI infrastructure, because they're the ones that have massive amounts of capital to create massive training environments using billions and trillions of parameters. My personal view is when you're looking at large language models that have billions and trillions of parameters, that will always be a cloud game because the costs are so high. When you're talking about some training models using 50 or 100,000 GPUs, the capital infrastructure cost of that is outrageous. However, if you're looking at mid-sized training models or small machine learning models, where quick decisions need to be made for a subset of your client or customer base, those are the things we're starting to see kind of repatriate back to the on-prem environment. So I think it's going to be a balance.
I'll just add, I used to be the chief operating officer for the data center group. So before I took this role, and one of the things we also saw is, as Vlad said, there is a lot of compute power that needs to be in place to get these training models optimized. And that's very cost prohibitive for a lot of companies. However, as model is trained, there are going to be improvements, incremental trained improvements, and a lot of that can be done at the edge as well. Once you've got the major training done, you can incrementally optimize and train that model at the edge, but it doesn't require necessarily as much compute, and it can be fed off of the inference machines and the data collecting at the edge. So it's gonna be a continuous cloud to edge to device. He's right. We're seeing growth in both spaces. We service both spaces. I can guarantee you we're busy in both spaces, and so I don't see a slowdown in growth in either one at this point. But I do see everybody optimizing around their specific use model using, and Samir mentioned this in his talk, Lenovo technology, because we're one of the few companies that can actually go from pocket to cloud. So we find ourselves in a lot of these conversations because we deliver technology from end to end. So
I think the big, if you talk to CIOs, I think the biggest thing that they are looking at is how do I sort of, first of all, is workload placement. Which workload stays on-prem, which workload stays off-prem. So I think that's the big question that they have. And secondly, cloud is an operating model. So how do I sort of replicate a public cloud experience into a private cloud? And that's where I think the true scale discussion becomes so relevant. And third is obviously the modernization piece on the app side and also on the data center side. I think those are the three things that the CIOs are looking significantly. Obviously, security is sort of an omnipresent topic on all this, but those are the three big things in CIO's mind.
So I'm not sure who this question is to, but maybe to Vlad, because you brought it up at the start about how sustainability is inherently at odds with Gen AI. And obviously we saw sustainability jump in the ranks of the kind of priorities of the CEOs this year. And I just wonder, like, how is that conflict being responded to or reconciled when that is climbing up the ranks at the same time as them wanting to invest in AI?
No, good question. So there is no doubt that the energy level required to do even just a simple ChatGPT query. I know this is data that they'll never make public, but based off of the infrastructure that many of these cloud providers have, it is billions of dollars of infrastructure that is consuming gigawatts of power. And so one of the things that we see from the large cloud providers is they are making it more of a focus around sustainability to save energy conservation because they know things are getting out of control. But they also know that this is a performance game. And so, just to, Lenovo being a partner of F1, for instance, I'll kind of make an analogy. Even F1 has governing bodies on how much performance you can put into a car because, you want to make it safe for the teams and the drivers, but you also want to make sure it's it's something that's sustainable, right? You don't want and I think the cloud providers are seeing something very similar where they're all pushing the boundaries at an incredible rate, but there has to be some kind of governance when it comes to the sustainability factors and the ethical factors of generative AI. And so many companies are looking at that saying, you know what, we are actively looking at how do we ensure we are a sustainable organization. And I think something that has to happen is there has to be more pressure applied to the cloud providers to say, what are your net carbon plans? And as long as they're abiding by those, that's a good thing. Like, for instance, Lenovo said we will be carbon neutral by 2050. And across 18 different manufacturing sites, that's a big challenge for us. However, I will tell you, companies like Microsoft, where we just won an award for being the most sustainable partner, because we are servicing some of Microsoft's infrastructure environment, we actually view that as one of the best awards we can get. Because we know that we're bringing technology that's more efficient, more effective, and they're concerned about it. They are very concerned about the sustainability aspects of what they are commissioning. So, it is going to remain at odds because the power consumption to do so many manipulations of data in the trillions of parameters is something we've never seen before. But that's why these frameworks were created. However, if cloud providers and other institutions make sure that they do this in a ethical way, I think there's balance to that. And so putting data centers near hydroelectric powered dams is probably a good idea rather than trying to pull it off the grid. And for Lenovo to be doing things like warm water cooled servers that adds 25-30% efficiency to a data center environment, those are all very useful things. And sometimes these dynamics in the industry create innovation. And we truly believe we're on the forefront of that when it comes to some of the things we're doing from a sustainability standpoint, which hopefully gives us a competitive advantage that more and more organizations will want to choose us.
And just to add what was said, Lenovo looks at this holistically. Compute is everywhere. It's not just in these spaces we're talking about. It's AI. And so, we're the largest device manufacturer, I think, in the world. And so we have responsibility for that. And so we're putting in services in place, and these two gentlemen can, add to it, but lifecycle services. So how do you deploy a device and then bring it back into your environment to recycle, reuse, and other elements where companies are starting to, this is a trend where companies are asking for Lenovo to provide lifecycle management of their devices, not to fill up landfill with them, but what value can you get out of the device after its useful life is expired in their environment? How can you use those elements in a lifecycle support? Vlad mentioned our factories. We built a factory in Hungary where we provided solar panels on top of our factory. That supplies power to the entire city of Yulo. So, we're trying to give back to the communities, back to the environment in other ways than just, water cooled, which is getting a lot of attention because of our Neptune technology. But we look at every aspect of the products we will deliver, as well as our supply chain. So we start at the beginning all the way through it, and we are part of the supply chain to others. So they're looking at us. We have taken a very aggressive stance in the industry. We're on the first to say net carbon neutral by 2050, and there's a science-based measure of that. This is not, independent. There is a published, subscribed, science-based approach that we abide by, that we've communicated to the industry. I don't believe a lot of the people in the industry have gotten there. We have. And so it's a very serious situation, and within our company, we take it very seriously.
If I just add to that, and you can see sustainability is we're very passionate about it. Just from an Australian context, I was here a couple of weeks ago for the Supercomputer Association, SCA. We had a stall. We sponsored that. It was a high performance supercompute show, which many of you would be aware of. We actually displayed our Neptune technology there, and I could just tell you that it was heartening to see all the data center providers were there. It was heartening to see how interested and focused they were on this, and the interest it generated, because to Vlad's point, 30% efficiency it brings in. So this is an area that we're, apart from data center, high performance computing, scientific organizations have actually deployed it and are in the process of actually deploying it. So it isn't, the interest is there absolutely to get on the sustainability bandwagon. So all the things that the gentleman mentioned, this is an area that is a big focus for us from a product perspective. It's a whole cycle, the factory, supply chain. It's also, when you talk about the devices, what sort of packaging we use, recyclable bamboo packaging. It's the whole 9 yards. So it's not just one aspect that we're making a great product and we're sustainable. That's how it works. I mean, it's across, and that's why the 2050 science-based combination.
Talk about the packaging, where you plan packaging biodegradable.
Yeah.
I don't know if we started shipping it. Is this public?
Yes.
So as part of our, sorry, sometimes you know too much, right? Not often the case, but this time it is. But we have packaging that is biodegradable, and you plant it, and it's seeds, and it grows certain things. So it's basically environmentally conscious packaging. And just all those kind of things all add up. Little things add up to something major. So.
And can I ask, given that we're all about smarter AI, how much information has AI been able to give to you to more, to generate more energy? What ideas has it given you to make better servers? How have you used AI to improve your own operations in exactly the same way that you're hoping all of your customers will use AI for exactly the same things?
So I think one of the first things we've done is we've implemented AI across all our manufacturing flows to do quality control and early failure detection. And so, for instance, I'll tell you there have been things that we have seen where maybe somebody has bought a ThinkPad laptop and there was some kind of a catastrophic event on it, and they come back and they say, hey, this was an issue caused by Lenovo. And we go through our manufacturing environment, number one, to say, is this battery defective, or is this hard drive or SSD defective? And we can go back in moments' notice to review the entire development cycle and look at what lock codes are produced around that device that may have failed. I will also tell you that there have been instances where we have also detected that people have made changes, replaced a SSD and came back to us and said, well, this caused a defective failure. And we would say, no, that's not the SSD that was originally in that notebook. And in fact, it's not the right screws. It didn't pass our manufacturing process. And so this is an aftermarket modification. And so it also protects us from a legal standpoint. So I would think from a quality control, a legal standpoint, we have implemented, because, if you look at, there's a crazy, because we're the number one PC manufacturer in the world, I think we manufacture 90 million, 100 million PCs a year. And so it's a crazy amount of product that we actually go through our 18 manufacturing sites. And for us to have AI helping around quality control, defect management, optimizations on the manufacturing line, going into things like legal justification, making sure we can track back to the screw what was put in a laptop or what was put in a server. It's amazing that by using AI, we actually become more efficient in the whole process. And so those are things we do every single day.
Yeah, if I could just add to that, and I'm going to refer to some data that I had used recently. So if you look at we actually have implemented an AI-powered advanced production scheduling, an APS, in capabilities that has actually been developed in-house. And this is where we're going to refer, so I know I don't want to get the numbers wrong. So the results have been pretty dramatic. 24% more production line capacity, 19% higher production volumes, and from a customer point, a 3.5x increase on on-time deliveries. And this was leveraging AI in our factories.
Well, it's just wonderful when companies are eating their own cooking, and it's a beautiful result.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's also a case study for your customers.
It actually is a case study. Yeah. We're actually more than happy to share it with you.
Yeah.
So there is a case study.
Yeah, sure.
In a supply chain, and makes us the Gartner, the fifth on the Gartner top 30. We're number 5. Technology. 8 overall. 8. Sorry. Yeah.
Even so, that's great. Well, thank you.
Hi, Daniel Croft, Cyber Daily. So just kind of building on that last question, pardon me, is Lenovo kind of utilizing AI for a security standpoint? Because obviously threat actors are leveraging AI to kind of lower the barrier for entry and for things like that. Is Lenovo also kind of leveraging the technology to defend itself or, its partners?
I'll start with this, and this is not, I guess, a cop-out on your question, but to communicate to the outside world what we're doing in security is a challenge for security. Vagary is one of the elements you deliver in security. But suffice it to say, yes. I mentioned this. I apologize. I did talk about this in the earlier session, which is, look, not just Lenovo. Everybody has data on how their networks are being used, how their employees use devices. That is valuable to use AI to understand if something is unique. So you imagine I'm now in Australia. 90%, I travel a lot, but let's assume I don't. And 95% of the time I log in from where I live. And all of a sudden I'm logging in to my system from Australia. You can imagine a scenario where I'm asked a few more security questions. Just to make sure I pass a few more hurdles, because this is not a normal behavior. If I access an application I've never accessed before, you might find a few more security hurdles to say, okay, is this really you? Because this is not normal behavior. So I think, and the network, if there's traffic flow across the network that's not traditionally how we see our network being used, you'll see an investigation on what that traffic is and what it's being used for. So I think all IT organizations are looking at that aspects of normality and anomalies, just like I talked about in the deep fake. Wow, his hands are moving the same way, his eyes are, look for anomalies in my speech pattern and my movements. So short answer is yes, but we obviously don't discuss every element of it.
Any last questions, ladies and gentlemen? We are about to wrap up. All right, we'll take that as a hopefully nicely appetizing would yes. Thank you.
Thanks for being here.